Right. Well, welcome everybody. We are certainly glad that you are here today. This is Downright Capable, and I am excited about our show today. We have, and I'm going to let Marla do the brunt of the introduction there, but we're going to be talking about something that's very, very important because, all of us who have family members with special needs, we need to think about the future, and that future is when we're no longer here, and that's kind of hard to think about because I imagine myself being here with my family forever, but someday, obviously, we won't be here, and so it'll be important for us to think about what that looks like. And so, Marla, I'm super excited to be hearing from Phil today. So would you take a few minutes and introduce our guest?
Sure. I actually met Phil Clark through a mutual friend, and I am actually really excited he's here today as well. So let me just tell you a little bit about Phil. He actually is the founder and the president of Enable Special Needs Financial Planning. Let me bring Phil into our show. And Phil began his career in the financial service industry with the intention of helping families with children with special needs for them to plan their future. And he quickly realized that the industry standard approach to special needs planning was very different from the way his family had planned for his sister's life. So I just want to say hello, Phil. We're happy to have you here.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Take the show.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Glad to be here. You guys are awesome. So my name is Phil Clark, and my wife and I have founded Enable Special Needs Planning in our 5-step system that helps families plan across the country for a purposeful and impactful life. And like Marla said, there's so many things that I saw as I've been in this industry for 10 plus years of what special needs planning was. And it was so different than what I believe planning really should mean. And it really comes back to, and I tell this story a lot because I think it captures the essence of what I believe planning should be. But when I was 4 years old, my sister Sarah was born. And just like so many families across the country that I have talked to over the years, my parents didn't get a congratulations from the doctors. Right. Instead, they heard, I'm sorry, your daughter has Down syndrome. And, over the next weeks and months, various doctors and nurses and other professionals gave my parents their limited expectations for the abilities that my sister would not have. My parents heard things like your daughter might not be able to ever ride a bicycle. Your daughter might not be able to ever be in a mainstream classroom. She might not ever be able to live independently. And, as you guys hear this a lot too, there were so many other lists of limitations. But one of those, in word for word from the doctors, was kids with Down syndrome usually don't learn to read, and you should expect the same. You should expect the same was that kicker, right? And, I wish that those doctors were to have followed Sarah's life, because 30 years from that date, Sarah is now working in a second grade classroom where one of her main duties in that classroom is tutoring kids on their reading abilities.
I love it.
Just the same thing the doctor said she'd never be able to do. So,
yeah. Well, and Phil, just to that point, and I know you've got a lot to share, but I think that's the narrative that we all experience, that we have all been given, so many of those things that our kids can't do,
sure,
and our family members can't do. And I think all of us, everyone, here, and then everyone watching or that will watch on the replay will testify that our kids time and time again show the world that those limitations are not appropriate for them, that they're going to surpass those limitations.
Sure.
Downright capable.
Absolutely. That's why we're doing the show.
Absolutely. 100%. And, it's one thing that we focus on is helping families think beyond those limitations, because no matter who we are in life, I think that it's so easy to get caught up in a limited mindset, but we've got to think more abundantly about that, whether it's our lives or our loved ones' lives, but it's so easy to be caught up in that. And, with my sister and really how Enable had come together, a few years ago, there was a child in her classroom who had fallen so far behind in his reading levels that the teacher had called the parents in to discuss her concerns. And the school year is only a few months from completion, and together the teacher and the parents decided that it would be best to hold that child back the following year. And for whatever reason, this teacher put Sarah with the student, and for a short time on a daily basis, he would spend time reading to her and she would read to him, and together they would work through comprehension worksheets. And at the end of the school year, when the teacher would retest the entire class, she found that this child had completely caught up to the rest of his peers and
Peer role modeling.
moved on to the third grade. Yeah.
Great.
And so his mom was telling me the story about what Sarah had done, and told the child the last day of school, that child walked up to Sarah with a handwritten thank you card that he had made for her, and he gave her a hug. But, his mom was telling me the story about what Sarah had been able to do. Sarah was saying right there. And of course, she perked up, and she had a grin from ear to ear. And, I saw that she was proud, right? She was proud of that child for everything he'd worked for, everything he'd accomplished. But I also saw that she was proud of herself.
Yeah.
I saw that she was proud of that she was able to make such a difference. And that is where that story and the stories of so many families that we serve, just like that, that's what the foundation of Enable is. We believe that everybody has the ability to be impactful in other people's lives. And the three of us, we strive to be impactful. And that is what gives us purpose. But we're not unique in that ability. My sister's not unique in that ability. Your guys' loved ones aren't unique in that ability. But finding ways to allow for our loved ones to live out their unique life of purpose and impact, I believe should be the focus of planning.
Yeah. Well, I love that script has been flipped for your sister, because, she was given that limitation of she's never going to be able to read. Now she's not only working in a second grade classroom, but she's working with a struggling student who has now found success because of her work.
Sure. Absolutely.
That's fantastic.
And she finds purpose to her life every single day in what she does. And, and purpose is different for every person, and everybody finds their own unique way to be purposeful and impactful. So
absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely.
That is great. So Phil, explain to us the pros and cons to special needs financial planning, I should say, or special needs trust planning.
Well, and maybe even, so, how is that different than just regular trust planning too? Like, why is it called special needs?
Sure. Good. Yeah. Good questions and good. So the way I saw this when I entered this industry, special needs planning, just in general, really just meant two things. It meant the financial planning aspects of thinking about the future. And it also meant thinking about the legal aspects of the future. And when we think about what those two things mean from a financial planning standpoint, when we talk about that, we talk about life insurance. We talk about ways to funnel assets from the parent's estate into a vehicle that's going to allow them to receive supplemental income while still getting government benefits, right? That's the main piece of the financial planning. From a legal planning standpoint, we're thinking about wills and trusts, guardianship, special needs trusts, potentially. And, when I look at this, and this is a thing that I argued with industry for so many years about, I looked at that and said, for this plan that we implement for families to take effect, parents have to die, right? And
yes.
unfortunately, nobody wants to talk about that. And that's the thing.
Right.
But I looked at what that model was. And as a proud big brother, I looked at that and said, no, Sarah deserves such a more comprehensive plan than only focusing on when my parents are gone. We've got to focus on today. What are we doing today that's going to allow Sarah to live that life of purpose and impact? And I think that not only thinking about the future from a planning standpoint, but also thinking about today is so important.
It is. Absolutely. And you said something that I'd love for you to kind of tease out a little bit more. You talked about supplemental income while still getting government benefits. And I think that sometimes people with special needs, the government policies, and correct me if I'm wrong, almost seem to limit our kids or who grow up to be adults, because if they make too much money, which isn't really enough to live off of, then they lose those benefits. So how does special needs planning or trust, kind of shelter that so that they can still have meaningful work and yet not cross that line into making too much income where they don't get benefits? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Good question. So with anything that, financial institutions or government put in place, there's rules that we have to follow, right?
Right.
So that whether it's a 401k or whether it's insurance or what it might be. But when it comes to special needs planning, our loved ones can only have $2,000. They can't have more than $2,000 in their name until, before they're kicked off of the government benefits that so many families need, especially from a healthcare standpoint. And
Right.
so the question is, with all this, what strategies do we put in place so that we can get around that while still getting the supplemental income and the healthcare benefits that our loved ones need? And there's really two different types of strategies that we can use. And one is the ABLE account that's fairly new. And I know there's a lot of families who are concerned and have questions about this. And one is a special needs trust. And both have different pros and different cons. And a lot of families have questions of, is it one or the other, or do I need to look at both of those? So
Right.
Are those questions that you guys get a lot as hosts of this, of concerns about the ABLE accounts?
I say we haven't so far yet, but the topic, I was going to say, our topics haven't really been focused as much financially yet.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about IEPs and community and inclusion, things like that. But so this is kind of our first foray into the financial world.
Okay.
So no, not yet.
Okay.
So we're leaving it up to you to share.
All right. Good.
Absolutely.
So just from a broad overview of what these two types of accounts and strategies can do. So what these both do are allow your loved one to be able to accumulate assets without sacrificing the government benefits that they need. And they both do these in some similar ways, but they also have very different approaches and different limitations and different applications, I should say, with them. And so the new one that's out there is the ABLE account. And there's a lot of, like I said, confusion and questions on that. Every single state has been able to adapt this ABLE program to their own needs. And that's why the different states have come out with the ABLE accounts at different times, because every state had to say, here's what our state is going to offer.
What does it look like, right?
Yeah. And so there's a lot of how I look at the two, I guess I should start with. So an ABLE account I look at as more short-term to mid-term accumulation goals and needs for a family, just because there are some capped limitations on what we can do within an ABLE account. Mm-hmm. And from a special needs trust standpoint, I look at that more of an estate planning tool. So when the family is no longer here, how do we make sure that the individual we're planning for has assets to be able to provide a good lifestyle and a good livelihood for the rest of their life. So those are the two differences that I see. The ABLE accounts are more for short to midterm. Long term, we're looking at special needs trusts.
Okay. So talk a little bit about, so we have a trust for our son. But we have not dabbled into the ABLE account. He's still pretty young. He's 10.
Yeah.
So we're not in that, I guess that arena. In the short term, I mean, we're still supporting him, obviously.
Right.
But so what is that? I mean, are you talking that 18 to when my wife and I pass away? Like what is that short term to midterm time frame, and how does that look for somebody, I guess is what my question is.
Sure. Yeah, I would say that and every family is different, right, for how we're going to utilize the two of them. But from a general standpoint, for that example that you just gave, I would start now and look at the ABLE account as something to accumulate, Christmas money, birthday money. Eventually, when they get a job, being able to take that paycheck and put it in the ABLE account without sacrificing the government benefits. Okay. And the advantage of that is there's different tax advantages. Some states have tax benefits at the time, a lot don't, but every single ABLE account gives you a tax deferred growth and gets you to be able to withdraw those assets tax free. It's similar to a college 529 savings plan. That's the same chassis it's been built on.
Okay, so I'm a verbal processor here, Phil, so forgive me. And Marla, if I'm dominating too much, just jump right in. So I'm just thinking, so as my son gets older and ideally we'd love for him to get a job and be as independent as possible, so like your sister, she's got a job, she's working in a second grade classroom, she's helping kids with their reading skills, whatever else. So she obviously gets income from that. Now, if she makes too much, then she loses benefits. Sure. So that money can be put into an ABLE account. So it's kind of like a protected savings account.
It is.
Or more of a checking account.
Yeah. It's protected savings. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and then can she take from that? Like
Yeah,
with my checking account, I got a debit card and I take from it as I need it.
Yeah, that's what I was doing.
Are there rules about how often she can take from that, or how does that work?
So, and that's one of the advantages of a able account versus a special needs trust, is because you can actually have a debit card. Most states have a debit card that you can get with that, so that if it's an approved expense, which it's a disability expense, and that's a pretty loose term, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can swipe your credit card and just make sure that you keep the receipts of what you're using with that. But it's the funds are very accessible to families, and it's not, you don't have to have a trustee like you do with the special needs trust.
Okay. So the way I'm equating that, my wife and I also, and I don't know all the terms. I'm so not, the financial world's not my world. But we have a medical, so money is taken out of my paycheck, goes into an account so we can use it for medical bills or whatever. But we also have a card that we use. So I'm going to take my son to the eye doctor later today. I'll use that card. I'll swipe and pay for that. Now, I save that receipt in case I ever want to come back and say, why was this there?
Yeah.
But otherwise, there's an organization that just checks and they see that that's an approved expense and we're good to go. So is it kind of like that? It's
kind of like that. And how that would work, a government would have to come and audit you and say, what were these expenses for, as long as you can prove those expenses. But it's very similar to that same account that you were talking about.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. That makes sense.
And then so the special needs trust on the opposite side of things. So there are, and why I look at the special needs trust as a long-term estate planning vehicle is because there's no caps to how much you can put in there. With the ABLE account, you can only have $450,000 as of right now in that account.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
That's quite a bit of money.
That's quite a bit of money, but if you're thinking about if we're using this chunk of money to provide for your son or your daughter for their lifetime,
right,
$50,000 would go fairly quickly. And so,
right,
from a short to midterm standpoint, if they need different ways of spending money or different resources that they need, it's a good now for that.
Right. Okay. So go ahead.
There's also one more number that's important to understand, and that's $100,000 in these ABLE accounts. So $100,000 is the max that you can have in your account without turning off SSI. So once they turn 18 and they're getting SSI income, if your ABLE account has above $100,000 in it, that turns off.
So then how does that work with the 450? That confused me a little bit.
Okay, so two numbers to think through. $100,000 and over is fine. You can continue to accumulate money in those types of accounts.
Mm-hmm.
You just aren't going to get SSI. You'll still get Medicaid. You'll still get your healthcare benefits.
Okay.
You won't get the SSI income every single month. The 450,000 is the absolute max that you can have in that account. Period.
Okay. That makes sense. So now, thinking ahead even further into the future, my wife and I are gone. That special needs trust has taken effect. He has a significant amount of money. Does the person who is who's in charge of that special needs trust, could they then take some of that money and put into the ABLE account as he needs it, or how does that work? That person who's the executor of the trust.
Sure. Yeah, they definitely could, because there are tax benefits of that ABLE account. So if you shuttled money from that, and these are all technical legal things, but it would be possible to move assets from the special needs trust to that ABLE account to allow that money to grow tax deferred, because there are taxes associated with the special needs trust.
Great. Okay.
Marla, is there a way, if we're going to discuss the differences and the pros and cons, I did send you a slide that shows the differences between the two, and that might be a good visual as I go through.
Okay, let me know what you guys, hold on one second. This is new to us here. I don't even know what there. Okay.
And then if you could move to that second slide.
Okay. Let's see if I can make it bigger. Sorry. This is new to us.
This is new. I was going to say, Marla, you're much more technically advanced than I am.
All right. Hold on one second, guys. All right.
And feel free, Marla, to put those in the show notes if you want to, if people want to.
Okay.
to get those slides. But this is a good chart showing the difference between the two. The first line, it shows the facts about the special needs trust. The second line shows the facts about the ABLE accounts and how they compare. And so, you look at the differences between costs. If you open up a special needs trust, it's going to be a lot more, there's going to be a lot more of a cost associated with that because you have to get an attorney involved in drafting this. And that's got to be done in such a specific way. So it's important that you choose an attorney that is specialized in creating these types of trusts. Where an ABLE account, you can jump on the state's website, open it in 5 minutes, and fund it with as little as $25. So that's a huge difference between the two.
Yeah.
It shows different taxes. The earnings are taxed with a special needs trust. The taxes grow, there's no taxes with the ABLE accounts. It grows tax-free, and you can withdraw the money tax-free also. So, if families have different questions about this is a good resource of just comparing the two and how each of them work.
So then, does the ABLE account also grow does it accumulate interest?
It can. So there's different investment options that you have with it. We can be very conservative and we can have everything in cash if we want to, or we can be very aggressive and have something in a more of a growth type mutual fund within there. But every single state has certain investment options that families can choose from.
So they could also lose money then. If I
also lose money,
put $1,000 in, the end of the month I could have $950 because of the investment going down.
Yeah. So families have got to treat this as they would another investment and understand what risk they're willing to take and what time horizon they have to be able to determine how risky they want to be with this money.
Okay. Because I was kind of picturing it more along those lines as that medical, and again, I don't know all the terminology, but the medical savings account basically that I tap into to pay our medical bills or just our checking account. So this is more of an investment type of an account that you can still draw from.
Correct. It can be. I mean, like I said, it can be 100% cash that's 100% guaranteed. And we know it's sitting in a savings account, in our personal lives, it's not going to grow much, but we have that peace of mind knowing it's not going to go away.
It's always there. Right. Okay. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Did you need me to show the other slide, Phil?
That's okay. I kind of talked through, and you can post both those slides on there. The other slide that I had was an example of Indiana's ABLE account, and within that slide, it shows the difference between the $100,000 cap for SSI and the $450,000 cap for the entire program. And every state is going to have a little bit of a different program, and it's important for families to understand the differences between their state and other options. Because I think this is something that families don't realize too, is that a family in Indiana could go to a different state to open up an ABLE account because they have a program that fits their needs better. So
that's actually really interesting to me. Did you know that, Brian?
No, I was just, so we live in Arkansas, Marla, you're in Massachusetts, and Phil, you're in Indiana. Is that right?
Correct.
So could I open an account in a different state, but still live in Arkansas? And my son is able to use that money?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Wow, it can cross state lines. I didn't know that.
It can cross state lines. Now, there's some states that don't allow that to happen, but there's a lot of states that are open to all 50 states. So you'd have to check that state specifically. But like I said, every state has their own nuance and difference, and there might be a different state that better suits your guys' goals and your needs.
Right.
So I'm thinking, we have 4 kids, and our hope is that one of them might want to help support our child when we're gone, and be in charge of some of those things. We can't guarantee, obviously, that they're going to live in Arkansas or even that we'll live in Arkansas the rest of our lives. But so I'm thinking, my son has an ABLE account, and we set it up here in Arkansas. And let's say my daughter, says with her other siblings that she's the one, she's glad to take, our son and he can live with her or near her or whatever, and she'll help out. But she lives in Iowa.
Sure.
Now, of course, if state law permits, she doesn't have to take all that money out of the Arkansas account and put it into an Iowa account. They can just keep it in the Arkansas account if that's beneficial to him. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Yeah,
that makes sense. And there might be some nuances with different states and how you transfer things. So it is a case-by-case basis, but that is possible.
Generally how it might work. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
because then it doesn't limit either that person who has the ABLE account from moving to a different state.
Yeah.
Or
the thing that
the
you
person
have
who's
to,
a caretaker for that person has to live in the state where the ABLE account is.
sure. One thing that you have to understand too with government benefits, those don't cross state lines. So if the individual moves to a different state, those government benefits don't automatically move
Right.
with them. They've got to reapply. So
Right.
these ABLE
Okay.
accounts and government benefits are completely separate. While the ABLE account shields money from the government benefits, they're not one and the same.
Right.
So they would have to still apply. So if we move, they move to Iowa or whatever, they would have to apply for how Iowa interprets the law, and they hand out their benefits to people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. But the money that's in that ABLE account is still his, assuming Iowa and Arkansas get along with their state laws.
You assume that.
I would assume that. Yeah, let's hope so, right? So,
And if you wanted to roll it into a different states, that's fine. If you have money in a 529 college account, you can roll that money in from a 529 into an ABLE account also. So there's different ways of transferring assets into different things. So if you had a child who wasn't going to use all of their college money, you could actually roll that into a ABLE account.
Okay, that makes sense. So talk a little bit about, because as you were kind of talking about that, so we have 4 kids, and our desire is that hopefully one of them will kind of be the person that helps take care of our son, as we are no longer able to, or we're no longer around to do so. But what if that doesn't happen? And I know we can't prevent this, but what if we have a situation where someone else is taking care of our son or your child and or loved one or whoever, and that doesn't go so well? Maybe they take advantage of that person, either financially or some other way. And I know you can't prevent this, but are there safeguards that are there that help with that?
Sure, and that's a good question, and that comes along with the legal barriers, the legal protection, aspects that you put in your wills and your trusts and the guardianship documents and all of these things. That is the last step of our planning process of making sure everything is wrapped up together, making sure that the plan continues to happen as parents want it to, but also the protection is there. And, that gets into a lot of guardianship questions and how do we protect our loved ones as best we can? Like you said, Brian, there's no way to be 100% certain that they're not going to be taken advantage of, but there are certain ways that we can protect that. And guardianship is one of those things. And thinking about my own family and my sister, Sarah, she's very good at budgeting. She budgets her checkbook every single week. She knows exactly to the penny how much money she has in that checking account.
Right.
But she doesn't understand the value of a dollar.
Yeah.
So at McDonald's, if they said a double cheeseburger is $20, she would say, okay, it's $20, and she would pay it. So she has the risk of being taken advantage of, financially, if something happens. So there's certain aspects from a guardianship standpoint that we can take to protect them in certain areas. Obviously, there's full guardianship where they are no longer their own. The parents are the legal guardianship after 18, but there's also limited guardianships and limited protections that you can put. For example, we could just have a financial guardianship on Sarah, where mom and dad would have to sign off on every single decision from a financial standpoint. But she would have other freedoms and abilities to make her own decisions in other areas. So it's a very personal, it's a very individual conversation that families have to have, understanding ways that their child might need to be protected for the rest of their life.
Okay. And you mentioned guardianship, thinking about that, there are benefits and pros and cons to everything, so you can do a financial guardianship versus complete guardianship.
Yeah.
Can you talk about different, that's, Marla and I, obviously we're guardians of our kids right now. They're still underage, but at some point in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to be experiencing having to make that decision. What does that look like? I don't even know what questions to ask, really.
Sure. No. So there's different options you have, and we can be creative in this. And this is where we would get an attorney involved in helping draft these and understanding the uniqueness of the situation for every single family. But for example, if Sarah, going back to that example, if Sarah needs to have guidance on her financial affairs, my parents could say we have to be her, financial power of attorney. We have to sign off on everything she does because we don't want her going off and being able to buy a new car, right? But potentially Sarah could make her own healthcare decisions, or she could make different legal decisions and that sort of thing. So there, we can separate the decisions that Sarah could make for her own if she is capable in some areas.
Okay.
So Phil, can I ask you a question? And maybe this goes to the your Enable guide, your free guide.
Sure.
And I want to pop that link up here. But you actually have a really nice setup where you go through different sections of life, I guess. Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah. So especially as we were talking about at the very beginning, special needs planning for me and for what I believe goes much more beyond just what happens if in the future. We've got to focus on today. And Brian, you were talking about, your kids and when they take, either guardianship or they are the caregivers and supporters of your child. What are we doing today to allow your child to live a purposeful and impactful life, but also allow the people surrounding them to be able to support and love and care for them? And our 5 areas of planning help families have a peace of mind of knowing that their child is, well prepared for the future, but also their entire family is well prepared for the future. So we have a free ebook that we just released a month ago that we would love for your families who are watching this to access and use. And it goes into so much detail about each of the 5 areas of planning and the conversations that they need to have in each of those, and gives specific examples and gives a guide of how to navigate through those. But the first area of the planning that we guide families through, and I share with families, I believe it's the most important piece of the planning process, is the vision plan. And the vision plan really helps families identify their why. Why would they begin planning in the first place? And, there's different aspects to this, but the first aspect of it is, what are the parents' main intentions with why they're planning? What are they trying to be for their family? Because as we all know, and, I've had conversations with my family, these conversations are very emotional. They're tough. And families tell me all the time, we feel overwhelmed, we feel frustrated, we feel confused and worried and afraid. All of those emotions are normal for families as they're going through this. And we've got to have a way to overcome those emotions, because unfortunately, those emotions are what stall people in their tracks. These are the reasons that families either never begin planning or they start planning and so we have to have a way to overcome those. And when I'm sitting with a family for the first time, I'm always curious of why is it important now that you guys are taking the time and it's important to you to begin the planning process. And every family is unique, every family is different. But I find across the board, there's 3 main reasons of why they're planning. Number 1, they want to be great providers for each other, for their family, and especially their child with special needs in the future. And that means different things to different families.
Sure.
Number 2, they want to give their family every opportunity for success. And success means different things, but success is so important to families. And then number 3, they want to be able to pass along the memories and the experiences and the values that are so important to their family to their next generations. And so those are the 3 reasons that families say we want to plan. And so when they feel overwhelmed and frustrated and confused, we've got to focus on this why. Why are you sitting down and playing in the first place? And that gets us back to this. But the second part to this vision plan is identifying what a great life for your child looks like. What are your hopes and your dreams for your child? Why are we planning in the first place? Right. And also, what are the hopes and dreams that your child has for their own life?
I was going to say, we've kind of done that for our child right now, but as he gets older and starts to mature and understand things differently, we want to invite him into that conversation. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's so important to do that because they should have a voice, right?
Absolutely.
And, and we share that with families now that when and if it's appropriate, bring your child in and bring, as many people into these conversations as possible. And we found this out the hard way. This was a thing, this has been a trial and error for our family and our process that we guide families through is based on what our family needed, but also what families across the country needed. But I remember once we got our family's plan complete, and this was many years ago, we'd spent, almost a year because there's a lot of discussions that we needed to have of what Sarah's plan was going to be. And we were finally happy with it. And one Sunday after church, we were around my parents' table and we were just having a casual conversation, and Sarah interrupted us and she said, "I got a question. What's going to happen to me when mom and dad die?"
Yeah.
And we realized for the first time we had never included her in those conversations. We had a plan for her. And so, mom said, "Sweetie, whatever happens, you're going to be taken care of. You can go live with your brother Philip, or you can live with your younger sister Grace. But whatever you want to do, you will be loved and you'll be supported." And she started crying. She broke down and said, "Good, because I've been worried about that for a long time."
We don't know.
That brings tears to my eyes, Phil.
Yeah.
So it's so important that family, because whether we think about it or not, our loved ones are wondering what's going to happen. So
I know our older two kids, so Nate is our third of four, and our older two kids have kind of started to question, what's going to happen or what would happen, and obviously, ideally we all just grow old and die, but sometimes accidents happen and we leave before our time.
Sure.
And so, our older kids have kind of asked, what's going to happen? And we have some dear friends that would take our kids, and then that trust kicks in and things like that. But we've also talked to them about, it's important to take care of family members, and they kind of argue with each other sometimes about who's going to get Nate, so it's kind of nice, but
my stepbrother, she just gets Jacob automatically. There's
that's right. His sister, he's going.
That was the
deal. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But it's so important. I mean, even grandparents should be involved in this conversation. This is a question I get a lot of: who should be involved in these conversations? And obviously the parents have to be the core of this and the decision makers, but a lot of families want to bring in, if there's step parents, they want to bring them in, and they want to bring in grandparents, they want to bring in cousins, anybody who's going to be an influential person in that child's life, potentially in the future, really should have an understanding of what the plan is.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Is that still then considered, I guess, the first step, that vision plan, or does that go into your second step?
Yeah, so that last conversation kind of bled into a lot of the other steps of our plan process. The vision plan really is just getting an idea of what this great life looks like and why we're planning in the first place. The second step of the planning process is our life plan. And the life plan helps you document every single detail about your child's life. And I know there's a lot of attorneys that will tell families to take a blank legal pad or a Word document and just start writing everything that they know. And that's easier said than done sometimes, right? And so for my family, as close to my sister as I am, there's so many things that I don't know about Sarah. What supplements does she take? Why does she take them? Who's the doctor that recommended those? And so if mom and dad were gone for a unexpected 2-week trip, or if there was an unexpected transition that had to take place, I would need to know so many of those details about Sarah's life. And so inside this ebook that you'll get, there's a guide list and a checklist of different things that you need to discuss and consider and document about your child. So we're talking about, medications and daily routines that are so important to your child, but so much needs to be documented, not only documented, but updated over time.
That's good to think about. I know.
So that is what the life plan does. Helps you feel confident. There's so many families who have told us that one section alone has given them just such a peace of mind about the future, because now they know that no matter what happens, there would be somebody else that would, in a sense, have a guidebook about their child.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I know there's so many things.
Would you like me to go on to do you have any questions, Marla, about that? Or you want me to go on to the third area of planning?
You can go into the third area of planning. Brian, can we hear you? Can you hear Brian?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah.
You can hear me?
I can't hear Brian. I can't see Brian.
Oh, I wonder what happens. Okay. Well, I'll get Brian back.
Okay.
Go into the third step.
Sure. So the third area of planning that we guide families through, and it's inside this ebook that we want to give to everybody, is the resource plan. And we all know that it's going to take a team to allow this great life to become a reality. So in this resource plan, we address, who are the individuals, what are the services, what are the organizations that we need to surround ourselves with today, and in the future to make this great life become a reality. And
Phil, can you see me now and hear me?
I can see you now. You're back.
Okay, I'm back. Yep. So
technology is great sometimes when it works, right?
I know. Yeah. Right. So, no, I was going to ask, no, just kind of comment on that third piece, that there's so many things that we as parents do for our kids on a daily basis that we just don't even think about. And so I'm glad that you have that in there because it really kind of helps us to plan out and look at every little thing that we do, that then we can communicate to someone else to know that those, and not that the things can't change, but at least they can start off with knowing how it's done.
Sure. Yeah. And obviously things change so often, right? So you got to continually update so that it's accurate for,
Right.
for that. And even if it's just a babysitter staying for a couple week period, just having that information has been such a peace of mind for so many families.
Yeah,
Right.
Absolutely.
So
Great. Thank you for.
we were talking about that resource plan, right? As you jump back on, and this resource plan just helps understand, what team we need around ourselves today and the future to make sure this great life can happen. And not too long ago, we started working with a family. It's been within the past year, and the mom shared with us. She said that they worked so hard throughout high school to make sure that they had the tutors and the resources and the support necessary. And she could tell she was so proud of her son. She said, and he graduated from high school and he got a diploma, and it was such a proud moment for her and her family. And he also got into a community college, and he went through community college, and we worked so hard with him and his tutors, and he graduated. She was so excited, but the mood completely changed. And she said, but he's been at home for 3 years. He can't find a job. He's amazing with computers. He's got so much potential, but he can't articulate his value because his interpersonal skills aren't as high as he would like, we would like. So the interviews stop after 10 minutes, and he's been home for 3 years not being able to find work, and he's depressed. And so when we look at this resource plan, we've got to think creatively. Early on, we think about therapies and those sort of things, but when we get into later years, we've got to think creatively. We've got to think outside the box about how we're going to allow this great life to happen. And I told this mom, I said, we need to find a job coach who can help him sharpen up those interpersonal skills, and help him with the interview skills, and help him articulate his value he could bring to an organization. And I said, and we need to find a job coach who is willing to go to that organization and say, here is the individual who's going to be applying for this position. Here is the unique abilities that he has that he can benefit your organization, but here's some challenges that we see. And the mom said, does that person exist? I said, I don't know, but we'll find them. So we actually found somebody for that family that was out of state that did a conversation similar to what we're doing. She worked with that individual over Skype, and he was able to find a job. So
Good.
So I have a question with regards to the resources part of it. So we had just had a conversation, Brian and I, in our last show about, involving our kids in the community. And from that interpersonal perspective, I was thinking to myself, like, what social organizations, I say bus buddies, but, for adults that we want them to be a part of, I would think that needs to be listed there.
Yeah, the social part of this is huge. And
we want them in,
Yeah, we just spoke at the NDSS, National Down Syndrome Society's conference, and they had an amazing self-advocate track. And Marla, you and I were talking about this, and I wish my sister was there because that would have been so good for her from a social standpoint and from a confidence standpoint. So the resources go beyond just a job coach. It's how do we empower them to feel confident and feel comfortable in social situations so that they can represent themselves.
Well, there's a lot to think about.
And I'm actually working with a dad right now who has a son, not with Down syndrome, but a different disability. And he kind of feels like the district, he's still I think he's starting high school, feels like the district somewhat dismisses that social aspect because it's not impacting his grades. His grades are decent. And so I think that, just from that standpoint, and this is kind of outside maybe of your realm a little bit, Phil, but just it is important for families to make sure that when you are working with your school district, to not ignore that social piece because, it's great that you get a B in English or in science or whatever, or you pass and you graduate. But if you don't have those soft skills to go through an interview, you don't get a job.
Sure.
So that high school diploma, that community college certificate is not helpful
Right.
if it doesn't turn into something.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know,
and it goes back to the vision plan. There's so many families that we work with that take that vision plan to their IEP meetings, because that clearly lays out what does a great life from a social standpoint look like, from a vocational standpoint. There's so many different aspects that we've got to think through, and not only just in the future, but what does it look like today? What does it look like 5 years from now, 10 years? So it gives families the building blocks and the starting point of here's where we are, but here's where we want to be. And I find that a lot of schools during those IEP meetings are eager to learn about what their overall goals are with this vision.
Absolutely.
That's right.
So, Phil, talk about, okay, so what if, so I grew up, my parents were divorced, and so my mom was a pretty low income earner. And so the time that I lived with her, you know, she was working, going to college, didn't have a lot of disposable income.
Sure.
And I'm just thinking, you know, what about those families that have family members with disabilities that don't feel like they, one, have anything to pass on
Sure.
to their child, and two, if they do have a little something, maybe a life insurance policy through work, or maybe they do have some sort of life insurance policy that's not really a special needs trust, but they have something they could pass on. Like, what do they do? Or maybe they don't feel like they can afford services like this. Like, how do you talk? Like, what would you say to those families?
Sure. It starts, no matter what type of family we're working with, we've got to be efficient with what we're doing right now. And we've got to look from it, if we're talking from a financial planning standpoint, we've got to make sure that both the family's financial plan as well as the child's financial plan for their future are working together. And being efficient in what you're doing and being organized and understanding how everything works together is so important, because I can't tell you how many times I've heard families say, there's no way we can think about our own retirement because we're putting so much effort into our child's financial security. And for us, if we can help look at everything, so many families are bleeding so much money out of their financial plan without even knowing it, just because of not being efficient. And so if we can recapture some of the dollars to start working on different goals, that's our main intention. How can we be as efficient as possible so that we can reach your goals? And we've got to start early. You know, the sooner we start with this, the easier it's going to be.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because, you know, our mortality, we're all going to face it, you know, and whether you come from a lot of means or you come from a background of minimal means, you still have to, you know, think about that family member and how can you balance what you do now, whether you're making $15 an hour or you're making quite a bit more, you know, you want to be able to think through that and help your family member.
Yeah.
Now, what if, so maybe I'm a parent and I don't, you know, I don't really have a retirement. I'm just going to depend on Social Security. And maybe I have a life insurance policy through work, but I don't really have anything else. And I just put my child down as the benefit factor of that.
Sure.
I know that can be dangerous, you know, because then suddenly they have a lot of money.
Sure. But you put that in the trust, though, correct? Phil?
What's that?
You would put it into the trust, not the
that's but I know that's what I'm saying, that they don't have a trust.
Oh. Okay.
And so they don't really understand this. They just, you know, because when you get a new job, you have to list, you know, a benefactor or a, you know, and so then something happens and all of a sudden your child now is very wealthy.
Sure.
Like what do you say, you know, what do you say to those family members?
And that's where I see a lot of families who say, you know, we can't afford to even plan from a legal standpoint, or we don't, not totally can't afford, but they don't think they need it because they say we don't have millions of dollars of assets. But for that point exactly, the amount of money doesn't matter. Your child can only have $2,000 in his or her name. And so that life insurance policy, no matter how big or small it is going to likely disqualify them for all of these resources that they need so much, especially since now in this scenario, you're no longer here, right? And so having the basics in need of just having even a shell of a special needs trust or a ABLE account just sitting, so that if and when something does happen, the beneficiary is not your child, it's the special needs trust.
Yeah. And that's why it's so key to your point, Phil, do it now. Even if you just had a baby, you don't have to wait till 18 years old
No.
to start that special needs trust. And I think that's where a lot of families fail.
Sure.
I don't need to worry about that right now because, again, I have so many other things I'm dealing with, school, transition, the list goes on. But something happens, God forbid, and guess what? Now it's just your child is just completely screwed, and it's like it is hard because you're like, what do I tackle first?
Sure.
You know, but really, it is something that is very crucial to plan for.
It is. And it goes back to those emotions. It's overwhelming and frustrating, confusing. And there's so much of that. Nobody wants to think about their own mortality, Brian, to your point. But, going through that guide and that ebook or understanding the steps, the focus is providing for a great life for your child today. But we also have to think about those what ifs. And, I can tell you situation after situation of families that I've talked to where something has happened and now their planning conversations are different or almost impossible. That's always tough. So planning as early as you can, it's going to make it easier, number one. But number two, we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. We've got to plan now.
Right.
And I just want to, because I know we're running out of time.
Yes, I was just noticing our time.
We do have a giveaway, and so I wanted to first thank Phil. And Brian, did you want to kind of talk about the giveaway, or did you want me to talk about it?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, we can all just kind of talk about it. I know, Phil, you had emailed Marla and I and just said that, you have like 2 life plans that you're willing to offer our viewers, today. Can you talk about what that is, what that entails, and then we can talk about what that will look like on our end.
Sure. So a few years ago, we developed a online planning portal that guides families through each of the 5 areas of planning. And we developed this because we had so many families outside of Indiana saying, what you're talking about in your message is so unique versus, talking about the abilities, the hopes and dreams versus just the what ifs. And so we spent a lot of time building this online portal to guide families through each of the 5 areas of planning. And the second area of planning is that life plan, and that's the tool and the resource that we'd love to give 2 away from. But as we talked about, it's so easy to say, just write down all the details that you know about your child. What our life plan tool does, it's an online interactive questionnaire that takes families through every single detail about their child and helps them, almost triggers a brainstorming session in them about what things they need to document in a easy to follow, guided manner. And by the time they're done going through our questionnaire, they have about 60 to 80 pages of organized, searchable information about their child. And, 6 months later, if a doctor changes, they can log back into the portal, update that doctor's information, and their plan changes. So it just makes it easy for them to document these important details that every family needs to do.
Okay. I'm writing down names, actually. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, because the intent was that we want to give one away to one of the live viewers right now. So if you guys can let us know where you're tuning in from, that would be helpful. And then the second person would be on the replay, because we do get a lot of people watching this on the replay. We want to give them an opportunity to get this amazing tool of yours, Phil. So everybody, if you're watching, just comment where you're joining in from, and that way it can help Brian get some names for the giveaway. And same thing on the replay. Please let us know where you're joining in from so that we can also pick a winner on the replay viewers.
All right. So my plan is just to, those who have liked our show today, and hopefully I've captured all of them. And let's see what I got here.
And Phil, can you actually, because you still have 2 more steps, right? The financial plan and the legal plan. You want to go through them?
Sure. So the last 2 are the financial planning and the legal planning. Those are what traditionally special needs planning is made up of. And those are very important still. It's not shouldn't be the focus of why families are planning, but we have to think about those what ifs. But also, because we've started with this vision plan of what this great life looks like, the financial plan becomes so much different. Now, how are we utilizing the government benefits? I know that's a question that everybody has. It's so confusing. How are we making sure we're utilizing all of the resources there that we need? But then how are we using our financial strategies to be able to provide the opportunities for our loved ones so that they can live that great life of purpose and impact that we want? And then we touched on the legal plan early on, of just making sure that we wrap up the entire plan to make sure it continues to happen as the parents wish. So.
Very good. Well, Jay Hill, I see you're in Rogers, Arkansas. Your name popped up on my random name generator. So we will get Jay in touch with Phil. I suppose we'll kind of connect the two and get him that giveaway there.
Great.
And then what we'll do in the next few days is we'll just, if you'll comment on where you're from, that you watch through the program, we'll add some more names into that and do one more giveaway, I think. So
yeah, Jay, if you could please just send us a direct message on the Facebook page and let us know your email, and then we will connect you with Phil, and then that way you guys can take care of that. I do want to share Phil's website with all of you because he has such great information on it that I wanted to share that information with you guys. And like Brian said, we will be picking one more person on the replay.
Absolutely.
So, Phil, is there anything else you want to share with us before we stop the show?
No, we've covered a lot. I appreciate you guys having me on. It's been wonderful. And just as you guys approach planning, the people who are watching this live and on replay, focus on what that great life looks like. Understand why you're wanting to plan in the first place, and that's going to help you overcome so many of those negative emotions. But that focus of what does a great life for your child look like? How can we provide a purposeful and impactful today and tomorrow should be the focus of the planning conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I know, Phil, I have really learned a lot, and I thank you for what you do. It's incredibly valuable information that is needed. Like I've said before, we all face our own mortality someday, and hopefully it's later than sooner.
Sure.
But we do need to plan ahead, and we need to think about our loved ones who have special needs, and not just Down syndrome, but any special needs, where they may need some support beyond our lifetime.
Sure.
And so I certainly thank you, Phil, for all you do and for the resources that you provide to families as well. So appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
You are going to be at the NDSC, the National Down Syndrome Congress, right? So for anybody that is going to be at the NDSC, the National Down Syndrome Congress in June, I think it's the end of June in Pittsburgh. Phil will be there as a vendor with your wife, correct?
With my wife, yes.
So, stop by his booth there because, like I said, he's got such great information, and I want to make sure that we get that information to all of you guys. So, thank you again. So I appreciate personally you being here and taking the time.
Well, thank you guys. Thanks for what you guys do too. You guys are awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. Well, Marla, I guess that wraps up our April show.
Yeah, it does.
And so we are going to do one more show this school year, I guess you can say. We've got it for toward the end of May. We had originally picked a date, but we need to look at our calendars again. But stay tuned. We'll make sure we advertise that, and then I think we're going to take a little break for June and July.
Yeah, we're going to do it off for summer, take a little hiatus so that both Brian and I can enjoy our families. But I do want to make sure that you guys know that we still are going to be watching the Facebook page, and that we will be putting some information on there as as the summer goes, so it doesn't kind of go dormant on us. Absolutely. But if there are any topics or any speakers that you want us to bring onto the show, please make sure that you let us know that.
Yes, absolutely, because we want to be a resource for you, and we want to engage in a way that is beneficial. Yeah. And so, obviously there's things that Marla and I are passionate about, and we could talk all day long about. But we want to talk about things that matter to you as well, because we don't know what situations you find yourself in, and so we want to be able to be a resource for you and support you.
And the other thing is too, Brian's son and my son are in that middle age. So I know that there are some of our viewers that have children or adults, I should say, in the older age, that, you're dealing with different circumstances than what we're dealing with right now. So again, let us know what topics are important to you so that we can make sure that we have those conversations. Because at the end of the day, we want society to see our kids as capable, no matter what their age is.
I'm going to say as downright capable. Absolutely.
Downright capable, no matter
Absolutely.
what.
All right.
So yeah, so thank you, everyone.
Yep. Have a wonderful afternoon.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
Yep. Talk to you later, Marla.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.